I think, it's one of the things, if you actually shared what goes through your brain, you never would get a date. There's no question. As an artist, you're trying to some degree, bridge what goes inside and bring it outside. And this is the expression of it. So in this case, on a very, simple level, it really is about flesh and experiencing flesh. My deepest desire in the world is to experience other people because I feel very isolated, really fundamentally isolated. And so I'd really desperately love to be able to really take bits and pieces of people and throw them up in the air and really have them in my hand. I was realizing that I was probably going through like a midlife gender identity crisis, mainly because I didn't realize, for some reason, not only can you identify, well, male to female or whatever spectrum of gender you want, but different parts of your body can identify different ways, and I just didn't realize this. And so, in some way, my psyche had been working this out for a number of years by kind of taking things apart, and what did they feel like, and what did I think they look like, and what if I throw them up in the air, what if I stretch them out, and then kind of putting them back together, just trying to create, something I felt comfortable with. So, that was useful. It was useful exercise to look and see your psyche doing something, and that's kind of what it ended up being. I went to a coffee shop of a bookstore, and I used to carry a deck of index cards with me because I had been doing animation on them, and they're good for doing animation because you can flip them and you can see what you're doing. And I had these various images in my head now for a few years, so I started animating them on the index cards. So that was the beginning of this animation. And so what I decided to do was to erase and redraw the images on the same piece of paper. So that means a first page of an animation is the first image, a second page is the second image. Well, instead of doing it on a different piece of paper, I drew it on the same piece of paper, then erased the first image, drew the third image, and erased the second image. So what happens is, you can't erase it all the way, so as the image makes its way across the page, you see the shadow of the image. The way I did the animation was, first I would do a storyboard that was fully animated, line drawings, fully animated on vellum. And we would do that because we couldn't change the timing once we got into production, because once we started drawing, it was too late. So I did a storyboard, a fully animated storyboard on vellum, and shot it. And then I gave it to my animator, Carolyn Stockbridge. So I got a Canon PowerShot G2, and so then the problem started. First of all, with the G-Shot, with the digital camera, most of them, the lens goes out, and then after you take the image, it goes back in again. So what happens is when the lens goes back out, it's in a slightly different place, and so if you're doing animation, the image jumps. It's not in the same place, which would drive you crazy. So then I said, okay, this won't work. I'll go get a Fuji S2 camera, and that's a camera with a separate lens, removable lens. So I put that in, but when you buy lenses these days, they're automatic lenses, which means the shutter, as soon as you take the image, the shutter closes. And it turns out that even the shutter, opening and closing, introduces error and the image would jump. Not as much as if the whole lens moves. So, okay, all right. So I had to go and buy an old manual lens, and there's a tab on the back of it you take off to keep the shutter open. So now I had a still image. So that all worked fine. But then I came up with another problem that I couldn't solve, which is in digital still cameras, this one, at least the ones I've worked with, and according to other people I've read about, their exposure is randomly off. So it's between like 4,000 and 4,500 images. So we had to go back and forth, Kate and I, in post-production and correct all those images. So that was a long process in more ways than one, and now I've come to the end of the process, and that's what I have to say about it.